Rich man gave up his first-class seat for old lady, then she did this. Julian Meyer had always flown first class. To him, economy class didn't exist, just a blur of tired faces behind a curtain. He was a 32-year-old tech investor, the kind who made his first million at 26, the kind who wore tuxedos to board flights simply because he could. His seat, 1A, offered champagne on arrival, a recliner that turned into a bed, and a personal butler named Carl, who addressed him by name. He wasn't arrogant, just detached. Life was always fast-moving, sterile, and predictable, until that day. Flight LX-218, Zurich to Cape Town. The boarding gate buzzed with murmurs of delay as Julian lounged in the private VIP suite, scanning investment headlines and sipping espresso. When the call came, he boarded before most even stood. He adjusted his cufflinks, sat down, and sank into the buttery leather seat. Noise-canceling headphones? Check. In-flight menu featuring seared duck and Belgian chocolate? Check. He was ready to disconnect, but life had other plans. As boarding finished, the murmurs turned to murmuring stares. Something was happening near the rear of the plane. An elderly black woman, frail, with deep lines etched into her cheeks, was struggling to make her way down the aisle. She wore a worn white head wrap, cream blouse, and soft cotton skirt. A metal walker clicked against the cabin floor, every step measured and slow. She wasn't alone. A blonde flight attendant guided her gently, whispering something into her ear. But the woman seemed disoriented, glancing around as if something wasn't right. Julian watched without much thought, until he saw her eyes dart toward the exit door, then back to the seats in economy, row 42, right next to the engine, next to the toilet, with no space for her walker. She was shaking. He could see it from 1A. The flight attendant bent down. "Ma'am, this is your seat here." The woman whispered something Julian couldn't hear, but her face crumpled. She couldn't do it. Not that far back. Not with that frame. Not for a 12-hour flight. And for some reason, without thinking, Julian stood. He approached the attendant calmly. "Switch her seat with mine," he said. The woman blinked. "Sir?" Julian nodded toward the old woman. "She can't sit back there. She'll collapse before we reach Munich." The attendant hesitated. "You're in 1A, sir." "I know," Julian said, removing his jacket. "Just give it to her." Passengers were watching now, a few raised eyebrows. A man in business class actually chuckled, but Julian didn't care. He helped the attendant gently guide the woman toward the front. As they reached the seat, she paused. Her wrinkled hand gently touched his wrist. Her eyes studied him, not with confusion anymore, but recognition. "You're giving up this for me?" she asked. Julian shrugged, almost awkward. "It's just a seat." The old woman smiled faintly. "You remind me of someone." She lowered herself slowly into the leather chair. Her breathing steadied. Her walker was secured nearby. The cabin crew brought her hot tea. She said nothing more. Julian walked back to economy. The contrast was jarring. Crowded, narrow, the air thicker. His new seat didn't recline, and the tray table was sticky. Still, he didn't mind. A few hours into the flight, he looked back toward first class. She was fast asleep, the white head wrap leaning against the window, her hands folded peacefully on her lap. He turned his gaze forward, but something lingered. A thought. What if that was your grandmother? What if no one had noticed? When the meal cart came by, Julian refused the food. The woman beside him offered him a biscuit from her own bag. He thanked her. She said, Not many people would do what you did." Julian smiled faintly. "It wasn't planned." The plane dimmed for night mode. Somewhere in the cabin a child cried. An overhead light flicked off, and Julian, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel like escaping. He felt present. As the flight neared its end, passengers began waking, stretching, rubbing their eyes. Julian stood to stretch his legs and wandered toward the front, not out of vanity, but curiosity. He peeked into the first-class section, unsure if she'd still be there. She was. Awake now, sipping warm water, her posture regal despite her frame. As he approached, she looked up and smiled, knowingly this time. "Come," she said, patting the empty seat beside her. "Let me tell you a story." Julian hesitated, then sat. The old woman reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Carefully, she handed it to him. "I'm not just a passenger," she said. Julian unfolded it, and his eyes widened. Julian stared at the paper in his hand. The document was aged, the ink slightly faded, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Dr. Nyota Elenga. He blinked. That name. He'd seen it before, on a humanitarian award show broadcast months ago. She was a legendary African medical anthropologist and philanthropist. She'd built clinics in war zones, established women's shelters in 12 countries, and once personally negotiated peace between two rival communities in the Congo Basin. A living legacy. He looked up, stunned. You're Dr. Elenga?" She smiled gently, eyes sharp and full of life. "I used to be. Now I'm mostly bones and memory. But I still remember good men when I meet them." Julian felt heat rise in his cheeks. I didn't know." She chuckled softly. "You weren't supposed to. That's what made it real." He looked at the seat he had given up. Suddenly, it felt even more important than he had realized. Dr. Elenga took his hand in hers, her skin paper-thin but steady. "Do you know why I was traveling in economy?" she asked. Julian shook his head. "Because I wanted to disappear for a while. I've been dealing with boards, government speeches. I just wanted to go back quietly, see my old home. Not as a title, just a woman." She looked out the window. "But my body no longer listens to my pride. I thought I could make it through that seat. But I couldn't. Then you came." She turned back to him. "You gave without knowing who I was. You didn't expect a thank you. You just acted." Julian shrugged. "It just felt right." She opened a worn leather notebook and began writing. "Then I will offer you something." Julian blinked. "What?" She glanced up. "A gift, one that can't be bought." She tore out a page, folded it neatly, and handed it to him. "Give this card to any of my offices. I only give out 3 a year." Julian slowly opened it. Written in delicate script were the words, "Lifelong access to the Elenga Global Trust. Any project, any need, justify the purpose. We fund the person." Below that, her personal contact number and seal. He didn't know what to say. This woman, who had impacted millions, was now offering him a doorway into impact, into a world of purpose he'd only flirted with from a distance. "You don't have to use it," she said softly, "but if you ever tire of chasing numbers, use it to chase meaning." Julian nodded, heart pounding. "Thank you. I don't deserve this." "You didn't need to," she said. "You already earned it." When the plane landed, Dr. Elenga insisted Julian walk ahead. "I'll be slower," she smiled. "Besides, I like watching people carry more than they realize." He stepped off the jet bridge into the morning light, still holding the card. The world outside felt different, larger, fuller. He wasn't thinking about his stock alerts or pending contracts anymore. He was thinking about possibility. A month later, Julian did use the card, but not for himself. He started a program funding education for children in underserved communities, naming it after his mother, who had passed from cancer when he was 17. The foundation's first grant came from the Alenga Trust. He never advertised it, but years later, when Dr. Alenga passed peacefully in her sleep, her will included one specific quote about Julian's gesture. He gave without needing to know who I was, and in doing so, reminded me who I still am. Sometimes a small act becomes something far greater than we imagine, and sometimes giving up your seat puts you right where you were meant to be. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.